Hello, and thank you for joining us. I'm Heather Taylor Measley, the Executive Director of the Ohio Environmental Council. Welcome to our 2021 annual meeting. While we sincerely wish we were with you in person, we are thrilled you have joined us today from across the Buckeye State. We're all grounded somewhere. The land that surrounds us is part of who we are. It reflects our collective histories, including the vibrant histories of those Indigenous people who are the original stewards of our natural environment. My home sits on the traditional territory of the Miami people who stewarded this land for generations. I hope you will join me in acknowledging those who originally cared for the land on which you live, as well as the diverse and vibrant Native communities thriving in our region today. Next week, many of us will gather with friends and family for Thanksgiving. One of my favorite traditions in our household is the Thanksgiving puzzle. For most of my adult life, we've lived far from family, so our Thanksgivings were usually spent with others who couldn't go home either. This hodgepodge of people always starts off the day shy. We throw out a puzzle on the table, and quickly you see strangers turn into a team with a common mission, searching out each piece of the puzzle, one working on the corners, one looking for particular pictures. After the puzzle is finished, we glue it together and have everyone sign it. And then we hang it up in the basement as a reminder of those amazing friends we spent that Thanksgiving with. So much of this story really reminds me of our work here at OEC. Our talented staff, our dedicated board members, and our tremendous partners bring their unique strengths and strategies to the table with the ultimate goal of securing a healthier environment for all who call Ohio home. This year, the number of pieces in OEC's puzzle have gotten even bigger as we have sought to expand the movement and make way for new, exciting leaders. Externally, we've grown our Emerging Leaders program for young professionals and started to explore ways to live into our council role by working with partners to offer more operational support. We've worked at the federal, state, and local level to not only push traditional environmental issues, but to really center those people most impacted by environmental injustice. Internally, we've hired our first human resources director. After pausing on hiring during the pandemic, we entered a season of also hiring with intentionality to recruit more diverse voices from different backgrounds, races, trainings, and all over the political spectrum. We continue to embed our values of justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion into every aspect of our organization, from our internal staff trainings to how we show up in coalition. We firmly believe that the way to address climate change in Ohio is to collaborate with communities most impacted. And that starts with listening to and working with advocates on the front lines, both internally and externally. Each piece of this ever-expanding puzzle has helped Ohio make true progress during a pandemic with an extremely challenging Statehouse. And the investments that have been made this year will help us be a better movement going forward. And it all starts with partners like you. So let's go back to the federal, state, and local work. Climate change is a challenge that requires each sector to be working to make progress. This year, the Biden administration made some big commitments. To talk about that work more, we have Trish Demeter, our Chief of Staff.
Thank you, Heather. Good afternoon, everybody. Let's start at the national level. President Biden and Vice President Harris took office in January with a decisive mandate to act with great strength on climate change, clean energy, and environmental justice. We teamed up from day one to support the president's Build Back Better proposals. From Cleveland to Cincinnati and Columbus to Toledo, the OEC and the OEC Action Fund teams held critical conversations with national and local leaders to draw attention to this once-in-a-generation opportunity to pass the most important climate change legislation in American history. We applaud Congress's recent passage of the Bipartisan Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act and look forward to the passage of the transformational climate and justice bill we need, the Build Back Better Act. Together, these bills included funding to help clean up polluted areas, upgrade our drinking water system, and modernize our electric grid and public transit systems. Importantly, they put the US on the path to cutting our climate pollution in half by the year 2030. and also to invest directly in communities of color that are often too left behind, and to create good paying union jobs across the nation. At the state level this year, our team closely tracked the state's biennial budgeting process, and we lobbied for many environmental objectives along the way. Overall, the bill included some really good news for our environment. The H2 Ohio program, which is one of the most comprehensive science-based plans for clean water in state history, received a renewal of $170 million in funding. On the public land side, $28 million was allocated to purchase the remainder of the AEP recreation lands in southeastern Ohio, and $500 million was allocated for brownfield revitalization. And specifically, we'll talk a little bit more about this later, the Doris Duke Woods in Malabar Farm State Park was protected from commercial timbering. Unfortunately, it's not all good. There was some bad news too in the state budget bill. It happens when you have a 2,000-page bill that moves through the process. We get amendments added that weren't so great for the environment. One, we were particularly concerned about diminished public input when oil and gas drilling is proposed in state parks and state forest and wildlife areas. Despite our strong opposition and hundreds of OEC members calling and emailing their lawmakers, this amendment made it into the final bill, unfortunately. Given that the Ohio Statehouse can be a mixed bag, we're reminded that much of our potential to advance change in Ohio is at the local level, where pragmatism and practical solutions can eclipse partisan politics. So here to talk about our local work is Emily Baca, our VP of Public Affairs. Emily?
Thanks, Trish. The OEC has built and deepened deep regional capacity through staff and partnerships over the past 6 years. We've learned a lot over this period, testing new community engagement strategies and honing in on our principles of engagement with partners. We've seen success advancing water affordability legislation in Toledo and just transition work in Appalachia. More recently, we've added teammates in Cincinnati and in the Mahoning Valley to listen to and work collaboratively with partners to meet the needs of our communities. And thanks to support in Cleveland, my hometown, we've been able to take this local work to the next level. 1 year ago, in anticipation of a new mayoral administration and new city council cohort, the OEC worked with a diverse set of partners to put together the Cleveland Comprehensive Environmental Policy Platform. What a mouthful, but a really important document. This document details actionable objectives and locally designed policy recommendations following the release of that platform in December of 2020. Can't believe that was a year ago. The OEC supported community-led efforts to develop a resident engagement toolkit related to the platform. This summer, steering committee members from both projects were able to come together to host the Cleveland Mayoral Candidate Forum. All 7 candidates who were running for mayor of Cleveland at that time participated in the virtual forum, and we had more than 450 people from every zip code in Cleveland attend that event here in Cleveland at community watch parties as well as online. Together, partners, and again, together is that important part here, partners elevated environmental issues to the forefront of local elections in Cleveland and helped turn out voters in this change election. And to talk a little bit more about this change election, we have a brief update on OEC Action Fund from Trish. Take it away again.
Thank you, Emily. Yes, the OEC's sibling organization, the Ohio Environmental Council Action Fund, helped get out the vote for climate candidates in local races for mayor, city council, and township trustees. They also engaged in several ballot issues and park levies. The OEC Action Fund endorsed slate of candidates was the largest and most comprehensive in the organization's 6-year history. An overwhelming majority of the 67 endorsed candidates were elected to local office in the Buckeye State, and that includes every endorsed mayoral candidate. The OEC Action Fund supported the election of the organization's most bold, racially diverse, and youngest slate of candidates ever to town halls across the state. And this included, as Emily mentioned, Cleveland, but also Cincinnati, Lima, Toledo, and Cleveland Heights. Additionally, all 6 of the endorsed park levies by the OEC Action Fund were passed by voters throughout the year, both in the primary and the general election, marking that since its foundation, the OEC Action Fund has supported park levies to the tune of $1 billion of investment in public lands through our park levy support. Across our family of organizations, we are working to secure very important policy wins and legal victories for our environment. And as a council, we're authentically collaborating with partners to do this work together. Collectively, across partners and our family of organizations, there is a groundswell of action at the local, state, and national level. And that is hard-fought victories for our air, land, water, and democracy. So now we'll get into some of those victories. And first, we will start with our Vice President of Energy Policy and our lead Energy Council, Miranda Lepla. Randy, take it away.
Thank you, Trish. I'm so glad to be here with everybody today as we talk a little bit about some of the important wins we've had on energy issues in Ohio over the last year. While some things remain tough, obviously, in our state, we're seeing a lot of excitement among local elected officials and communities that are pushing for a more sustainable future. We're making incremental progress at the Statehouse, believe it or not, and we're seeing a really significant shift toward focusing on climate policy with the new federal administration. So first up, of course, is House Bill 6. Couldn't get out of an annual meeting without a little bit on this. But with the help of supporters like you, we continue to fight against the worst energy bill of the 21st century. Since the news broke that the legislation was passed as part of the largest bribery scheme perpetrated against the people of Ohio, possibly ever, the OEC Action Fund has demanded its full and immediate repeal. So this year we've seen some success, but there's a lot more to do. So in March this year, Ohio lawmakers repealed the portion of House Bill 6 that provided subsidies for the First Energy nuclear plants, as well as 2 other components that I like to call the First Energy goodies, but also provided a windfall to First Energy companies. So while this is really a positive step in the right direction for Ohio energy consumers, it really doesn't do anything to address the components of House Bill 6 that are damaging our air quality and our environment. So the coal bailouts and our clean energy standards. So this is why we continue to fight for the repeal of the extended and expanded bailout of the 2 dirty coal plants, one of which is in Indiana. And for the reinstatement of Ohio's clean energy standards. The OEC Action Fund is working really hard to push for full repeal of the OVEC subsidies, and we're hopeful that the legislature will really soon restore energy waste reduction programs, or energy efficiency for Ohioans that helps us control our consumption, because the cleanest and the cheapest kilowatt hour is the one we don't even have to produce. But our work on House Bill 6 doesn't stop there. The last 2 years have unveiled really deep corruption within our utility regulatory structure, as well as the Statehouse at a level we've never seen. So we continue to press for firm accountability of the bad actors involved in this complex corruption scheme. And we continue to press for very strong reforms at the Public Utilities Commission of Ohio that put the needs of Ohio energy consumers and our communities ahead of the interests of utilities, which is what we've seen for decades. And this work is not easy, as I know most of you know, but it is really, really critical to Ohio's sustainable and clean energy future. So we believe House Bill 6 has been toxic, obviously, and problematic, but it's time to turn the page. So it's clear that after decades of energy policy that favors utilities and fossil fuels, Ohio needs forward-looking, equitable solutions that are good for our economy, our communities, and our health. So in September of this year, the OEC Action Fund proudly joined our partners on the shores of Lake Erie for the introduction of the Energy Jobs and Justice Act. And this is a bill co-sponsored by Representative Stephanie House and Representative Casey Weinstein. This act is intentionally designed comprehensive clean energy policy that's rooted in equity, economic development, and accountability. And this is the product of over a year of work with many, many partners working toward a new equitable clean energy vision for Ohio. So this legislation moves to aim Ohio toward a more equitable clean energy future by encouraging clean energy growth, workforce development, energy waste reduction, and curbing utility influence over policy and regulatory actions, which is what we see on a constant basis now. So next up, we've seen incredible progress at the local level. Ohio communities are really leading the way on climate action across the Buckeye State. So over the past 2 years, the OEC has supported the efforts through our work with Power Clean Future Ohio, a bipartisan organization that's dedicated to working with local officials to develop equitable climate solutions. So from Toledo to Portsmouth, Cincinnati to Warren, 24 cities and counties have officially joined the campaign by making climate action commitments, with just Solon joining as our 24th community last night, which we're really, really excited about them coming on board. So as one of the many Power Clean Future Ohio partners, OEC is really proud to provide technical support and advocacy support for the effort, including this year's inaugural Ohio Clean Energy Summit, which took place in May. The summit challenged communities to make the Ohio 30 by 30 pledge and elevated diverse clean energy voices across the state that are fighting for a more equitable, sustainable future for Ohio. So then back to the national level, after 4 very long years of playing defense, we're starting to see some really exciting action at the federal level on climate change. We've rejoined the Paris Accord. The infrastructure bill was just signed, and there is hopefully advancing the Build Back Better framework, which would really help us curb our greenhouse gas emissions across the country. Just a few weeks ago, one of the big highlights right now is a few weeks ago, the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, the EPA, released a proposed rule that will cut methane and other harmful pollutants from new and existing oil and gas operations, which is really critical here in Ohio. The rule represents a very important step forward and is a powerful signal that the Biden administration understands the harms of methane pollution from oil and gas operations, which is 84 times more potent in the short term than CO2. So this will help us slow down climate warming and really improve health and air quality incomes in communities across the country, including in communities with lower incomes and communities of color. So the proposed rule leaves important gaps to be filled on critical issues, though, such as the need for frequent inspections for smaller wells and a ban on routine flaring. So the EPA is hosting 2 upcoming public hearings at which advocates and we at the OEC will be testifying and pushing the EPA for more aggressive methane regulations to reduce those emissions as quickly as possible. So we'll make sure our OEC membership can make their voices heard by submitting comments. So stay tuned for more information coming from the energy team soon. And I will turn it back over to you, Trish.
Thank you, Randy, for that great update. As a reminder to all of our audience participants, we welcome your questions. You can drop your question using the Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen. We will address those later on after the presentations. So now we're going to turn our attention to our water policy work. Pete Booker, Managing Director of Water Policy, please take it away.
Thanks, Trish. Before I begin, I'd like to thank our Drinking Water Director, Melanie Houston, as well as our Northwest Ohio Regional Director, Nick Mandros, for their work on so many of these wins I wanted to highlight. At the national level, we're also seeing a lot of action on water. First, I wanted to celebrate that after months of deliberation and advocacy, President Joe Biden just yesterday signed the bipartisan infrastructure deal. The investments in this legislation will benefit the Great Lakes region in many ways. The bill focuses on building resilient communities in the face of climate change by investing in aquatic ecosystems and adaptation. In addition to providing billions for severe storm risk reduction and flood control projects, it specifically invests in the resiliency and the health of the Great Lakes themselves. The bill provides a monumental investment of an additional $1 billion for Great Lakes Restoration Initiative. This historic moment comes at a moment when our very own Great Lake, Lake Erie, experienced yet another notable harmful algal bloom impacting our Ohioans and our economies this past summer. That extra GRI money will be evenly divided over the 5 years and will be a substantial boost to efforts to clean up toxic hotspots, restore wetlands, reduce agricultural and storm runoff, and control invasive species. Additionally, there's $55 billion in new money for wastewater and drinking water infrastructure improvements. Most notably, this includes nearly $12 billion for clean water and drinking water state revolving funds, $15 billion for lead service line replacement, and another $4 billion to address PFAS with the focus on emerging contaminants. This week, Congress will now focus on the remainder of the Build Back Better Act, a once-in-a-generation climate action bill. Leaders in the U.S. House are hopeful that they can take action on the remainder of the Build Back Better Act soon, but there will almost certainly be hurdles to clear the Senate in the coming weeks, so stay tuned. One of the reasons the infrastructure talks in Washington are so critical is that lead-contaminated drinking water is a nationwide problem affecting every single state. Ohio, however, is second in the nation for the number of lead service lines, with an estimated 650,000 lines still in place that threaten the safety of Ohioans' drinking water. To eliminate this threat, full replacement of the entire lead service line is essential. Led by the OEC's Drinking Water Director, Melanie Houston, and in partnership, we pushed forward and secured additional funding at both the state and federal level while we are working to secure a comprehensive program to eradicate lead service lines in Ohio over the next 20 years. With your support, the OEC continues to advocate at every level of government for policies that do just that. This year, we developed 2 in-depth educational tools showcasing the need to eliminate lead service lines in Ohio's drinking water systems, including a comprehensive policy guide for local lawmakers. We also produced a short film featuring advocate stories from across the Buckeye State to draw attention to this pervasive issues. Keep an eye out in the chat box for a link to this incredible video. Looking towards the Statehouse, throughout the state's biennial budget process in early 2021, OEC staff delivered powerful testimony and OEC members sent hundreds of letters calling on lawmakers to maintain and increase investments in H2 Ohio, the state's comprehensive science-based water quality initiative. Together with OEC members and partners, we were successful in maintaining funding for the critical program in the state budget bill. The primary goals of this program include increasing agricultural best management practices in Northwest Ohio, creating and restoring strategic wetlands across the state, and to improve water infrastructure, including the removal of lead service lines in schools and daycare facilities. Because of our strong advocacy efforts, the DeWine administration is now equipped to expand the impact of this program with more resources to continue to build on the foundation that was laid for this holistic water quality initiative. The OEC will continue to work with the administration to help the program grow and evolve to meet Ohio's water quality challenges. At the OEC, we believe that access to safe and affordable water is a right for all Ohioans. In Toledo, the OEC's Northwest Ohio Regional Director, Nick Mandros, has been working in partnership with the City of Toledo's water utility, grassroots, and community stakeholders, including the Junction Coalition and Water Equity Toledo, to find new solutions to setting equitable water rates and to develop water affordability policy recommendations. Responding to growing water affordability concerns, these groups are all working together on Toledo City Council's Water Affordability and Consumer Protection Task Force to develop new programs and city ordinances to ensure more low-income residents in Toledo avoid shutoffs and remain with water service. This year, the Affordability Task Force worked with City Council to pass an ordinance to limit landlords' abilities to pass on new costs or shut off water for tenants while creating a new customer assistance program to eliminate water debt for low-income residents, which is the first of its kind in Ohio. This program will help keep members of the community, will allow them to get back on track while maintaining their access to drinking water in their homes. We hope that other cities around Ohio will follow Toledo's lead in creating policies to help ensure safe, affordable, and accessible water for all.
Thank you, Pete, for that great update. We are now going to hear from our Public Lands Director, Nathan Johnson, and the OEC Environmental Policy Fellow, Kalia Tellez, to discuss our Public Lands Program wins. Nathan and Kalia, take it away.
Hey, thank you, Trish, and welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us today. So the budget bill, we've heard a fair amount about that, but one of the really neat things about it was that some of the language that OEC drafted over the summer ended up getting into the budget bill and passing. It's now law. And seeing your words written into statute is always a lot of fun. And I think that's doubly true when those words are protecting a really nice piece of property, which is the case here. The law designates 120 acres of public forest near Mansfield. This is in the Malabar Farm State Park, and it designates that 120 acres as the Doris Duke Woods. It protects the Doris Duke Woods from commercial timbering of any kind in perpetuity. And it's not just any woods, and I'm sure some of you have been there, some of you have not, but it's got a lot of historic value. It was owned by Louis Bromfield, the famed author and one of the godfathers of the organic farming movement. Doris Duke Woods today is a great place to visit. If you like blackhand sandstone, if you like very large, old, impressive beech trees, if you like colorful spring wildflowers, this place has it all. And we're really, really honored to have worked with some great partners at the local level to get this legislation in place. And that includes Dan Hardwick, Eric Miller, and State Senator Mark Romanchuk. Everyone worked together to make this happen, and we're very excited. So that was one win. Another one, a very large win, comes in the form of stopping fracking in the Wayne National Forest. We scored a really big win there earlier in the year. Federal District Court issued a final ruling in our National Forest fracking litigation. This ruling prohibits oil and gas leasing on about 40,000 acres of the Wayne National Forest. And for context, that's about 30,000 football fields again, 30,000 football fields. That's a lot of turf. And it's something, the court's ruling is something that followed our merits ruling from a year ago. But this new ruling prevents any leasing, any drilling from occurring on all of these acres. We partnered with a number of great friends on this, the Center for Biological Diversity, the Sierra Club, and Heartwood. We filed this lawsuit along with our partners about 5 years ago. So it's been a lot of work, it's been a lot of time and effort put into it, but we can't be more thrilled with the results. Really exciting. And we couldn't have done it without support from all of our members, all of our supporters. So thank you very much. So with that, I will kick it off to Kalia to tell us more about what we've been up to.
Thank you, Nathan. The OEC's campaign to protect approximately 30,000 acres of the Wayne National Forest and 100 miles of hiking trail continues with support from more than 100 businesses, community organizations, and local government bodies across Southeast Ohio. Over the last year, the number of community organizations supporting proactive protection of Wayne National Forest has nearly tripled. Securing a federal designation like backcountry or a national recreation area would protect the public forest from logging, fracking, mining, and road construction. But the benefits of a named backcountry area are not just for the forest. The area, roughly the size of Cuyahoga Valley National Park in Northeast Ohio, could be a destination for activities like hiking, backpacking, horseback riding, and camping. Declaring a backcountry area will help make the Wayne a nationally recognized tourism destination, where visitors will support small businesses and help revitalize local economies.
Thank you, Nathan and Kalia. As our environmental policy fellow, Kalia has also been working on quite a bit on OEC's democracy program. So Kalia, stay on the line. We'd like to hear from you again, as well as our policy lead for democracy, OEC staff attorney, Chris Tavener, about the fight for fair redistricting maps, fair maps in the redistricting process as well. Before you guys dive in though, as a reminder to our audience, please submit your questions in the Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen. We will tackle those at the end of our presentations today. Kalia and Chris, take it away.
Thank you. Over the past year, OEC's democracy team has focused squarely on redistricting efforts because we cannot secure a healthy environment without a healthy democracy. In 2015 and 2018, Ohio voters decisively rejected partisan gerrymandering by voting for 2 redistricting reform measures. This year, those reform measures were put to test.
We were proud to join in partnership with the Equal Districts Coalition and to support the work of the Ohio Citizens Redistricting Commission to engage Ohioans in redistricting efforts across the Buckeye State. With your support and the support of our partners, the OEC educated hundreds of Ohioans about the redistricting process and supported dozens of community map-making workshops. We helped hundreds of concerned citizens prepare and deliver testimony at commission meetings and General Assembly committee hearings. With the Ohio Citizens Redistricting Commission, we supported district plans that were created through citizen-derived principles and reflective of Ohio's communities from the Ohio River to Lake Erie. On top of that, OEC staff delivered expert testimony at hearings in Cleveland, in Dayton, and several times at the Ohio Statehouse. While legislative leaders are still pushing through gerrymandered maps created in back rooms, the process is happening in the open and everyone sees how they're gaming the procedural system.
And what's been incredibly powerful throughout our work has been the intersection of district maps with environmental issues. We've had the opportunity to draw connections between gerrymandering and the lived experiences of low-income Black, Indigenous, and people of color communities who experience disproportionate exposure to toxic water, air, and soil. Throughout our testimony that Chris mentioned to the Ohio Redistricting Commission and Ohio Statehouse, we utilized a tool called EJ Screen to visualize what environmental injustice is and how it relates to Ohio House and congressional maps. Now, district maps can easily keep communities impacted by environmental hazards together, but they can also split those communities apart in haphazard ways. Partisan gerrymandering often requires the splitting of communities, especially communities that are connected across jurisdictional lines. For example, let's look at the proposed congressional maps for Hamilton County. the proposed gerrymandered District 1 in House Bill 479. Now it's shaped like a dumbbell, with the center containing many low-income communities of color who face the highest exposure to cancer risk, toxic respiratory hazards, wastewater discharge, and particulate matter in the air from being in the I-75 and Mill Creek corridor. Now there's a stark contrast between these communities at the center and the rural communities in Warren County and to the Indiana border. And by creating districts that divide communities in such hazardous ways, map drawers dilute the voices of the communities who deserve representation to overcome the environmental injustices they face.
Unfortunately, the Ohio Redistricting Commission and the General Assembly are attempting to stifle Ohioans' participation in this process time and time again. They failed to release maps on time, blatantly ignoring constitutional deadlines, and scheduled last-minute hearings, hoping Ohioans wouldn't show up. In September, the Ohio Redistricting Commission passed gerrymandered state legislative maps. In early November, the Ohio General Assembly started considering 2 gerrymandered congressional maps. This is a live issue right now. There was a committee hearing just a few minutes ago that was voting out a gerrymandered congressional map for the Senate to consider. We have already taken the fight to the courts, however. In late September, Ohio Environmental Council joined Ohio Organizing Collaborative and the Ohio Council on American Islamic Relations in a lawsuit against the Statehouse district maps. We're represented by the Brennan Center for Justice at NYU. By passing extreme and unconstitutional gerrymandered maps, elected leaders are refusing Ohioans the representation they deserve. They're denying a voice to Ohioans facing environmental injustice and the immediate impacts of climate change. If all else fails, we'll work with partners to lay the groundwork for a new redistricting process. This is a once-in-a-decade moment to create fair, competitive, and representative district maps while also setting the stage for a decade of pragmatic environmental policy. Thank you for having our backs.
None of this amazing work would be possible without our full team, and that includes our board. This year, we want to thank 2 incredible OEC board members that will be departing us. Chuck Wellman and Al Compan have tirelessly served our organization, our staff, and the entire state of Ohio. We cannot thank them enough for the time spent with us that could have been spent with their families, for their thoughtful contributions to strategic planning, and our countless meeting discussions that have helped shape our policies and priorities. We wish you nothing but the best of luck in your future endeavors, and we thank you again for what you've done for our organization. Well, I hope that gives you a feel for the OEC, what we've been up to in the last year and where we are headed in the future, and certainly all the different talented staff who really make this organization the special place that it is. We need you alongside us as the fight continues. Certainly we have a lot of battles ahead, and we will make sure to keep you updated every step of the way and to equip you with the actions to take throughout the year ahead. The first action you can take, though, today is to make a donation to support our efforts for the next year. We've dropped a link in the chat box, and we'll follow up with you with more opportunities to support this critical work in the weeks ahead. Thank you so much for being a part of our team, and please stay in touch. We appreciate everything that you do, and we're excited to get to work.